So welcome back everybody to Just Conversations. I'm Dean Lloyd from Lloyd Consulting Company. Just Conversations is solution-focused communication with the goal of informing systemic change. As always, my next guest needs no introduction, so over to you, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Pinkstone and I'm currently the CEO of Bridge Housing, shortly leaving. That's where we've been working together for a long time, Dean. Shortly leaving to head up the new Homes New South Wales agency for the New South Wales Government, which will basically bring together all frontline service delivery for public housing tenants and then also policy and strategy for the housing system in New South Wales. So I'm really excited about that new role, but it's bittersweet leaving Bridge Housing because I started my career in many years ago, and as soon as I found my way through to housing, I just became, an advocate for housing because I just see how transformative it is that you can't create your life and have a stable platform to reach any of your potential without a home. And as soon as I got started working in that area in government and then coming over to Bridge Housing, it's just been the most fulfilling career because, and you'll know this, Dean, every day you see the impact of your work and how it changes lives. It's just fantastic.
I don't know what happened there. Sorry, my computer just done something weird then, Beck. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yep.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. You just disappeared off my screen. Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
Congratulations on your new role. Very exciting. Very excited about that. One thing that I'd really like to touch on is what was one of the most memorable moments of Bridge Housing like for you?
Look, I think one of the most memorable ones was, well, there was a couple. It was getting together our tenant participation framework, building bridges. That was really important because it really meant that we started getting the tenant voice into the way that we delivered our services. And so that was a big objective of mine. So I think that's just been fundamentally so important to the way that we deliver services because we're actually hearing from our customers and our tenants and the communities in which we work. And when we're trying new ideas or trying to change policy, we've got a group of people who can help really inform that from their own lived experience. So that's been amazing. I think the other really transformative part for our organisation was the property transfer program and moving properties from public housing management in northern Sydney over to our management. And now we manage all of the social housing in the Northern Beaches, and we set up a new office. And so we were struggling with those things. How do you set up new offices? How do you embed culture? How do you make sure there's consistency, but you also enable people to do things differently locally? And I think it's been really successful, and that's a great office and a great team. And it just has built and contributed so much to the way that we deliver services locally to communities. So those sort of two big things have been fantastic. And then recently, I think us winning the development for the Elizabeth Street Redfern site, because that was a case where government was doing things the way they'd always done it. We go out to the private developers and they give us a proposal and then we work with them. And so it was a real opportunity for us to say, well, what about community housing providers? We're local in that area. We want to develop, we want to manage homes there, we want our new office there. And so having been successful on that proposal and that tender to government, really, I think, shifts the way in the future government will interact with the community housing sector around development. And that's been the best thing about working at Bridge Housing, because it's the ability to see ways of doing things differently and being able to do them and foster that in your team to look at new ways of doing things that perhaps we didn't have the autonomy to do in the past, that we tried to foster that culture in the organisation to think differently and trial new things. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. but you're constantly learning, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about working at Bridge is the dynamics, like the dynamic nature of the work.
Mm,
Where consistently, or you've implemented systems that consistently sort of review themselves and then implement, and sort of it can be frustrating at times because, oh, this isn't how we do it. It's like, no, but this is how we're going to do it. And that's the difference that I really sort of enjoy about working at Bridge and what you've done and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, very aligned in our passions around housing and all of that sort of stuff. Housing first, where I love
yeah,
to work. Um,
yeah.
so your new role, what excites you about that?
Oh, look, I think it's the potential to make a difference on a larger scale. I think because there's nearly 100,000 properties being managed in public housing at the moment in New South Wales, and that's hundreds of thousands of people's lives you're impacting. So I'm really excited about the ability, and particularly now we've got a new government in New South Wales, we've got a federal government, everyone's talking about the housing crisis. I think it's the first time at every level, even local government, every level of government is talking about the housing crisis and how it's impacting on the well-being of our community, but also the productivity of our community as well when people can't live near where they work or they have to travel miles to study because they can't afford anything in terms of rental accommodation or even to buy their own home. So I think that's the exciting bit. All of the external factors seem to be pointing to a real momentum for change. And so being able to take that and implement that at a different scale is really exciting. And also, there's just a lot of fantastic, as you know, in our industry, and I consider public housing and community housing, Aboriginal housing, we're all dealing in social housing. There's just so many passionate people. It's people fall into housing and social housing and affordable housing, and they get really passionate about it and they want to make a difference. So, how are we resourcing people to do their job and also supporting them to really make the difference that they want to see as well? So, those things are really interesting to me, and trying to create that culture within a government agency, I think, because sometimes it can be very risk averse, but
Yes.
we need to try different things now. The crisis is such that we can't just say what we're doing and how we've done it is the way we're going to do it anymore. And I think that there's a real momentum for change inside and outside government that will help in this new role.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be the appetite and the climate at the moment. So yeah, it was really, you sort of probably covered my next question about different and what it is about I like about you, and I'm excited about you going into the role is you're willing to get in there and do some different stuff. Do you see, is there anything stick out around the difference at the moment, around what you might be looking at differently?
Well, I think in terms of frontline service delivery, yes, that's going to be a major change because we've had a splitting apart of asset management from tenancy management, and tenants have been caught in the middle of that split. And and I know, unless your property's at standard and you're happy where you're living, it's very hard to engage in any other way. You need to get your fundamentals right if you're a housing provider, and that's maintaining your property's standard. And I think having asset maintenance services reconnected with tenancy management on the ground is going to be a fantastic outcome for tenants because it will put them right at the heart, and service delivery will operate around them. So that's both the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge because that's a lot of change in those regions delivering public housing to bring asset maintenance and repairs and maintenance together with tenancy management locally. I think the other area I'm really interested and passionate about, and that, is around tenancy management and tenant participation in the way that we do our work. And so I really want to see how we resource that up and we get that tenant voice locally into how we're delivering our services because it's so invaluable to have that real connection and that way of talking through problems and working through problems and looking at different ways of working. So I want to bring that back in. And then it's exciting around all the investment coming through the Housing Australia Future Fund through the Commonwealth. I think there's a real opportunity for us to be able to think about how we maximise homes on the ground, working in partnership with the community housing sector to do that, and how we keep building up also public housing. We need to deliver more housing in our housing crisis, and partnering is going to be critical to that. So that's a wonderful opportunity. And one of my obvious ones is the opportunity of bringing homelessness policy into the new agency is that real focus on housing first. We need a systemic response to housing first programs in New South Wales. And with the development of our housing homelessness strategy, we have the ability to really think about how we reorient service delivery to focus on housing first programs for people who are chronically homeless. So I think there's great opportunities around policy, around enhancing service delivery on the ground, but also to grow and deliver more homes for people in need.
Yeah, and I think something that I've noticed myself is in the Housing First program at the moment, it's very hard with the crisis to have a real sort of housing first, like actual housing first, because
Yeah.
they don't have the autonomy to choose where they can live for one. Which so that sort of skews it a bit from the start. But
Yeah.
still, I wholeheartedly believe in it, and part of that thing around why I'm excited to talk to you about this is because I spoke to a lot of people in the justice space, because that's sort of where my passion is and what I'm about. It's very hard to go to work from a park bench. Like if
Yeah.
challenge people, do 7 days on a park bench, go into work, and then come back and we'll have a talk at the end of the week and see how you feel.
Absolutely.
And that policy of housing first and all of that sort of stuff, as well as when I was in the private sector, I was fortunate enough to manage property for independently wealthy family, and we had the ability and capacity to just maintain the property, so people wanted to live there. And if you find people, what are you going to invest in? Like, here's a house, but I want you to invest in yourself, your community, all of that sort of stuff. I think it's so important to help and develop and grow. So yeah, that's really excited to hear that.
Yeah. I think you're right though, Dean. Like when you look at some of the most successful housing first models, it's housing first and housing and affordable housing. Because at the moment we're trying to do housing first in a housing crisis with no housing and a 1% vacancy rate in the private rental market.
Yeah.
So those things about choice and control and autonomy around choosing your home and getting that real investment from people about where they're living is so, so hard. Whereas if you look at some of the models overseas, and in particular Finland, it's been a reorientation of the homelessness service system combined with massive investment in affordable and social housing, so that you have more options for people as well. And so with the HAF coming through with our own government investment in New South Wales, we need to think about both of those alongside each other, because otherwise we're really just playing in a very, very difficult market, and it's very hard to really give to meet all of the criteria of a real housing first program as well.
Yeah. And that's what I've been talking to people about in these conversations, is like, where do we hit and where's the friction, and how, there's always going to be friction, but how am I aware around my friction impacting you and yours impacting me, and having conversations about that to either reduce it or, put a bit of grease the wheels, if you will, whatever you want to say. But just that awareness around that, where we overlap and how we can maybe do that better and reduce friction in some cases. Or, we do this is what we do, and you do that. And like, we'll just come together there, not sort of trying to take.
As you say, it's the conversation, isn't it? It's the actually articulating that we have different objectives at times. But I think that the way that you can do that is by putting people at the heart of those decisions rather than talking about your service system. Because I know we all work for government or organisations, and it's like, well, that's not really my job. This is my job, and this is what we're funded to do. And someone else is saying that. But I think it's about having those explicit conversations, like, no, I can't actually fund that because I don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah,
How can I work with you to do that for the client so that we're collaborating together to put that person rather than getting automatically in the bunkers around what's our responsibility or not?
yeah,
Having that person at that central in terms of thinking about that. And I think some of that coordination that you see through Housing First programs is some of the best stuff because you're working with agencies and you're helping navigate a system which is very complicated and complex for that person. But that's our job as workers to help people navigate that and to do that in the most streamlined way. So how you have those conversations and those strong partnerships with other organisations where you can have those honest conversations. And I think that really has to be localized and that really has to be trust based. I can set up an MOU with anyone, but really it's about the people working on the ground wanting to make a difference. And so really making it better for our frontline staff, giving them more autonomy and giving them and empowering them to do that work, I think is going to be critical for us because yeah, you can't do that centrally. That needs to be things that happen locally on the ground between people who are doing the best.
yeah. I've said for a long time, a community problem requires a community solution. Like that community has the most understanding and ability to address their needs, as well as just recently when I was on my fellowship in the Netherlands, what really come to the front was they have a real humane approach, and there's a thing called Dutch efficiency. Everything they appear to do is to the improvement of what they were doing. Similar to like Bridge, that dynamic thing of like
Yeah,
this, hey, we can do this better. Hey, we can do that better. And they're consistently having a review and then how they can get better at that. So that's
yeah,
a humane approach. Like how, like there's a lot, I don't know, there's a lot of talk about trauma informed stuff at the moment, which great, happy days. But if we treat each other humanely, it reduces the instance of trauma. So
yes,
if there's always
that's
going to be
right.
traumatic experiences like car crashes, all those sorts of things that you can't sort of stop traumatic experiences. But if we can have a humane approach towards those things and towards systemic change, I think that's where the most value and we can get the most purchase. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love that about being humane. It's
Yeah.
like putting that at the center of your decisions and that person and their yeah, you can have lots of terms for that, for where you're coming from, but that deep empathy for others and that understanding about how
Self,
you're making a
self.
difference
Like
and for yourself. Yeah,
capacity.
because it's not easy.
I'm not going to take 10 balls and juggle them because I can't, but just how, like, so that's for me really, like, I just be very human. I try to be as humane to myself as possible. And then
Yeah.
that's like, I drink out of, and then you can have a sip out of my cup, like I fill my cup sort of scenario.
Yeah, I think that's so that well-being, if you're not well in yourself and you're not looking after yourself and have that well-being, it's very hard to give to other people. Like that's when you're on a pathway to burnout. You just can't do it because you're not whole and you're not feeling well about yourself. And it's like you were talking about the intersections between systems and people. Well, we know, it's very difficult for people leaving the justice system. Where's the accommodation for them?
Yeah.
Then they go into homelessness. It places them at greater risk of all of the stuff that led in the first place to being incarcerated. So for me, it's like, how do you work with those different systems to create better outcomes for people?
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard. We've been grappling with these things for years about how you exit plan from
Well,
all systems,
one
not
of the
just
biggest changes at
incarceration.
the moment is for me is they're not people aren't deemed homeless until they're released, the day that they're released from prison. So those two systems can't talk together really.
Yeah,
That's a frustrating thing for me at the minute because I'm trying to negotiate someone returning to the program out of custody. That's
yeah,
another topic. We'll stay on this one at the minute.
yeah. To try and find out where people are coming and where are they in their journey to get
Yes,
out as well. It's very, very difficult and
can't be live on the
complicated.
register until they're released, which I understand. But if you've got someone
Mm,
that's sentenced that's getting out, that's like the day
mm,
they're getting out. It's not, oh,
yeah.
guy got out on bail. It's like, oh, well, we couldn't catch them. But that's back to the housing stuff. where do you, so I'm aware that there's a company at the moment that builds and can build, Australian company in Western Australia, that can build a house, 4-bedroom house in a day, robotics.
Oh yeah, prefab
So
and robotics. Yeah.
where that, obviously you implement that decimates the building world. So there's that friction. Where do we have these conversations? This is a friction. How do we do that? So where do you see AI and maybe technology and robotics even playing a part potentially in, the future? Well, the future's now, really. Humans are trying to catch up to technology at the moment, I believe.
Well, I mean, I think that the prefab stuff is really interesting, and it's been used to a
This
certain
isn't prefab,
degree for a
this is
long time.
bricks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. I've seen the ones where they go around in a circle in the little 3D printing. Well, I think it's about all of those things are excellent ways of delivering homes, right? So prefab has its place. These new technologies will take over, and they're locally based, which is also a good thing, because that's part of the big problem with building in Australia is the supply of materials and the cost. It's just very high. So, and in some regional and rural locations, that's worked for a long time, and it's important. The big issue for us is also how you scale that up in the city, and
Yeah,
how you create homes and apartments and supply in neighbourhoods where that are already existing, but you're trying to uplift around transport and things like that. So those technologies to be used, they're all great at the moment. They're all in their infancy. But yes, trialing those sorts of approaches is really helpful, because you get some practical examples of that. Um, and I know that that's something that the AHO have been really investigating, because they're also looking at Aboriginal housing. Some of those communities are very remote, and the ability to deliver housing like we do in the city, it's just so expensive. There needs to be different approaches. So the AHO, which will come under homes, and I'm so excited about that, because the Aboriginal community controlled housing sector is going to be growing, and we'll be able to be learning from what Aboriginal communities are doing, because they're very holistic in those communities.
yeah,
Housing providers also do childcare. The land councils have numerous parts of their business, and housing is just one. So it's very holistic in terms of
yeah.
solving housing issues
A lot to
holistically
learn
for
from them.
community.
A lot to learn from
And
them.
we absolutely do. We've got so much to learn. So I'm excited about the fact that the AHO is there, because it's not just about their policy agenda working through their board. It's also about how we learn across the agency from them as well, in terms of mainstream community and public housing. We need to learn collectively around that local delivery. Um, so yeah, there's those sorts of technologies to help increase supply. I mean, I think AI is the way of the future, and we need to embrace it, because the fact of the matter is, for social housing and affordable housing and property management in general, actually it's people driven. You need a workforce there working with customers. You need to be able to talk to other agencies, and that's what we're paying people to do that work, that empathetic work, but that customer service work on the ground. And so how can AI be used to free up our frontline workers to do that stuff, to do the relationship management, to do the tenancy management, and how can we use AI to streamline the other processes that we have to do in terms of communication and writing letters and booking things. That's where I see a real potential for AI, because it will free up our staff to do the work that they do well, without all of the administrative burden that does come with our work as well. So yeah, I think there's such potential, and it's something to be explored by our industry as a whole, because it is the way of the future. It's happening, and so
Yeah,
we need to be at the forefront of trying to leverage that, rather than fighting it or feeling resistant to it. To actually say, how are we going to leverage this technology for the best outcome?
yeah. Well, technology and humanity and where that sits and what that looks like. It's somewhat frightening at times. you have children as well, as I know that. So yeah, it's somewhat frightening at times when you can, they're sort of teaching us how to implement stuff where it should the other, in for the longest time, forever, the information flow has always been down, but it's starting to come back up a bit, which is
Yeah.
that scares the out of me. But just go.
Oh, the ability to share information is amazing as
Oh
well and frees it up. Some of the things that's frightening is the fake information and
yeah,
and the ability to fake um, both the information, who's saying it, even down to their voice and how they're looking on the screen. Those things I think are quite frightening because it is very difficult. It's becoming very difficult to be able to pick that stuff up. So yeah, that's what our kids have in the future. It's like what is real and what isn't real in terms of information flows. That's the thing that concerns me about some of the things they're watching on YouTube
yes.
and other things
Like
and
sometimes I
TikTok.
don't want to know, and then it's like I need to know what you're doing.
But some of those technologies, it's about the workforce of the future. So those are the
Yeah,
young people that are coming through. They're really technologically savvy,
yeah,
and they know how to use systems really well. So how do we embrace that and make things easier for them as they're going through the workplace and get them out in the field focusing on the things that matter rather than all of the other stuff that we do in our jobs, which can be a bit administratively burdensome at the moment.
yes. So as our sort of we're winding, getting to the end of our time, just what is it? So we touched on it before. What do you do? How do you replenish your like? What brings you joy in your life? For other people to understand, you've got a big job, or you had a somewhat big job. You're going into a massive job. So what was Bridges' portfolio, and what? So 100,000, was it like 5,000 to 100
Yeah, I think it's
portfolio?
nearly 4,000 to 100,000. So it's a bit of an upscale. Someone told me the other day there's over 2,500 staff. Well, we've got 110 at the moment at Bridge Housing. So I think the idea of knowing everybody and being out there, I mean so so for me, people are my thing. So I don't like working from home. I hate
I
working from
hate
home. I
that.
love being in the office with people and connecting with people, and I get real energy from learning from other people and having those relationships. So that's one really important thing, both at home with my friends, with my family, and then in the workplace. That really gives me energy. And then the other things is just the simple things around trying to be healthy, going for a walk around the river in the morning, um, just just being in nature. That's the stuff. If I start the day and I've gone for a walk and I've been in nature, everything just seems much better
Yeah.
for the whole day. So connecting to that, and people that know me know that I love mindfulness, and I take a big I make a lot of effort to do that morning and night to recenter and think about things and do guided sort of mindfulness activities because I do have that sort of I can be very racy in the brain, and that really helps keep you grounded and gets you back into yourself. So, trying to when I'm feeling those things or that anxiety or it's feeling too big, going back doing mindfulness, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, yeah. So, okay. Thank you very much for your time. I really love your authenticity, Beck. That's one thing that's really shone out for me just in the time that I've known you. I think I really met you on the train one day, catching it to work at Tempe back in the
That's
day,
right.
10 years ago. I really enjoy that you still catch the bus to work. I love seeing you around the office, watering your plants, dragging them out, water going all through the just so your doors never closed. You're happy to have, the randomest person walk off the street and sit in your office and have a conversation with them. I am going to miss sitting and doing the training with you, as we've done our real estate license CBD points the other day.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so
right.
yeah, and as always, as you always say, you can always come back. You know, I think your tenure's done though. So yeah,
I think
congratulations.
I've given it a good go,
I
Dee.
have.
9
Yeah,
years. I think
yeah,
I've
yeah,
given
yeah.
it a good go.
just missed out on your long service.
I know. What can I do?
Yeah. No, it's been a pleasure meeting you and knowing you. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And thanks again for your time.
Oh, thanks, Dean. And we're going to keep in contact. Don't worry. We'll
Oh,
be
yeah,
seeing each other around.
for sure. For sure.
Take care.